I mean, we've all got, and the fuck thing as well is that we all have anxiety. That's a natural part of us.
1 in 6, mate. Haven't you read the stats?
It's one.
Well, if you're a tradie,
I
it's
read it when I was at a urinal there. It's plastered all through the bloody bathroom.
Well, I'd counter that with 1 in 1 people have
100%.
anxiety.
Righto, we're on here. You want some coffee, Rossi?
Thanks, Derek.
I appreciate it, mate.
Delicious. Right, we're back. Episode 16 of TradeMutt's 120 Grit podcast, the podcast for the working class. And we're actually just rolled into part 2 of the chat with Nick Sutherland from MindFit.
G'day, Nicholas.
G'day again.
Well, the first one went so well, we thought, why not just go for another hour?
Well, it was a lot, pretty broad covering of my past and my background, what I've been through, and then the work that I'm doing. So I think we all agreed that there was a great opportunity while I'm in the Mutt Hut to go through a couple of case studies and sort of give the listeners a chance to resonate and relate to some things that other blokes have been dealing with. I was running a dinner once a month for my clients, for blokes who were struggling, and they'd all turn up at the first one, and it was hilarious that by the end of it, they walked out going, oh, shit, I didn't know you were struggling with the same thing I was struggling with, and you were struggling with, well, you know. Everyone's sort of walking around their own little worlds, and everyone's also putting up these facades that says everything is okay, but in reality, there's actually a lot going on in the background. So we've all got pretty much the same stuff going on.
Sounds like they were pretty comfortable to realise that was the case as well.
Yeah, well, it was
relief, a bit of relief.
Yeah, it was a safe space. We spoke about vulnerability before. We can touch more on that today, but they felt safe enough to be vulnerable because we'd created a space for that to happen, and then so they all started sharing. And I'm struggling with my kids. I got little ones, and he goes, "Oh shit, mate, I've got the same thing. Have you? Oh, does this happen? Does that happen?" And then so it builds a bit of
rapport.
Bond.
Yeah.
So
a bit of a rappond.
A rapport.
Rapport.
Yeah, I know.
Rapport.
Oh, it's moulded into the one, two words. Well, I mean, the main things that we're always hearing, same thing like Danny Frawley, we touched on him in the last podcast. And most of the blokes that Dan and I meet when we're out and about, we'll do a talk or whatever, and there's always, as you know, there's always one or two people that'll come up at the end and have a chat.
The brave souls.
And majority of them are all talking about either one or both of the same things, which is trouble with relationships and troubles with finances. And they're normally fairly interconnected.
And they seem to lead to lots of other things like, substance abuse, I guess, or can do, have a snowball effect.
So if you're struggling in those areas, you're going to be what I call in suffering, and then to make yourself feel better, you're going to reach out for a coping mechanism, which is alcohol or drugs or something like that. So it's sort of cause and effect in that regard.
Is it a problem that that perceived understanding of what success is, and that's why finances are such a problem for people when they have a lack of, when they have problems with their finances, that's why it's a breakdown for them and it's something that they're ashamed of, or is it something else?
It's pretty multi-layered. It's not something you can just go, this is it. I mean, we talk about the source of all pain being attachment and happiness meaning content. So we spoke about, remember, the avatar of Brian, who's a builder and he's got 20 blokes working for him, and then Dave, who's just sort of got his own handyman business.
Swinging doors.
Yeah, and Dave knocks off at 3:30 and goes fishing or plays golf and has less stress, but he's content. He's content with his little tinny, and he's ute his own since the 1984. But Brian up the road wants all the latest and greatest toys. And thinks that he has to have a massive business in order to sort of fund all of that. So, when blokes come in struggling with that sort of stuff, I start off with unpacking what does success mean to you. And if it's all about the external bells and whistles and all that stuff, then we spend a bit of time trying to shake that up a bit and where are your values really? What's really important to you? You know, is your boat going to be there at your funeral? No. Well, who is? My mates and missus and kids. So it's about sort of reprioritising again, I suppose, going back to that first fundamental and what's really important. And yeah, money's a big thing, but it's not the source of happiness. Money doesn't make people happy. You know, there's studies that are done, and anything you want over $100,000 doesn't add to your happiness. And we were chatting with one of your investors the other day, and money's just a magnifier. So if you think about people who win Tats Lotto, the majority of them, their lives become worse off for having won Tats Lotto because they don't know how to manage money. They don't value it. They don't respect it. It was just given to them and they didn't earn it. So, yeah, it's a tricky one.
Do you think it's got a lot to do with this, as Ed touched on, this perception of success? And when you look around, the reality is it's quite unhealthy to compare yourself to everyone else out there.
Totally.
But the fact of the matter is that a lot of people do that. And I think particularly it seems to be in the industry, in the trades and construction and even the mining industry, there's a lot of that, looking around and seeing what other people have got and wanting to get that because to them that's what success looks like.
Yeah, that's human nature. I guess we always want more. We're never really content with what we've got. Everyone wants the latest 79 series cruiser with all the bells and whistles on it, and
or a Defender,
or
whatever.
Defender 130. They're not bad. But that's the thing. Like I've got a Defender 130, and I love it, and it's my forever car. But I'm happy with the way it is. I could spend 50 grand on it easy, doing it all up and sticking everything on it, but I don't really need to. I bought a $5,000 camper trailer, and that serves a purpose, and that's all I need. So, yeah, like if you keep overextending yourself, then you're gonna come in. You're gonna need more money to fund everything. And I've got a mate at the moment who's just recently built a house on a big block of land in a very fancy suburb, and he's not even a year into living there. He's got to sell it because he can't fund it. He can't afford it. It's impacting on the rest of their lives.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's also, a common thing that Dan and I see, young tradies, like on apprentice wages, getting the flash car, then getting through their apprenticeship, then getting the builder's license and starting to do bigger jobs and got to buy 20 grand worth of tools, and it rolls on, and then they got, a boat or a jet ski, and they got rent, and then they're going out every weekend, and then all of a sudden they're telling us how much they hate their job and wish they could go do something else, but they're sort of stuck in that financial rut then where it's sort of, well,
you got to keep
I've got to go to work on Monday because if I don't.
So with that, what's the problem? Is finance the problem, or is mismanagement and a lack of contentedness the problem?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it.
So
they don't want to
it's cause and effect.
Yeah, they don't want to lose what they've got. Right?
But so many people live so close to the line, so close to the edge that if a job isn't paid on time, they just go into so much stress.
I know, and that's what's occurring all the time.
But you look at what they've got, and they don't have to live that close to the line.
I know, but why are they, do you think?
It's just because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses.
So it seems to cause a lot of stress, but a content life is probably a stress-free life.
Yeah.
And a stress-free life probably looks like living within your means and, as we talked about in the earlier podcast, finding happiness within yourself first and foremost.
Yeah, I love the expression to be unreasonably happy. And that means there's no reason for your happiness. You can just be happy. You can just be content with who you are. And people talk to me, like obviously I love personal development and growing and getting out of my comfort zone. And people say, how do you do that whilst being content? And I've had to marry two different philosophies, I guess, or two different beliefs. And the first one is I'm at peace with being imperfect, right? This version of me is nowhere near as good as the version that's going to be 5 years down the track. So I acknowledge that and accept that. But tomorrow is an opportunity for me to improve and to get better and to wake up and say, well, I wonder what today's going to bring. And so living with that sort of mindset frees me up just to flow through the day instead of waking up and just switching on straight away, and I've got to do this, I've got to get out the door, and money, and this.
So to that end, it sounds like what finance being a presenting issue is really just, I guess, the byproduct of not being content.
And the relationship as well, like that's symptomatic of a person not being content and mismanaging themselves.
It makes me think of, I hear so many stories of one of my friends, Hannah, was just recently in Ghana, and they've got nothing. There's kids running in the street. They've got absolutely nothing. They play a game where they fold bottle caps up and they fling them into a little, goal, and they play soccer out on the dirt with bare feet.
Yeah.
But you could not wipe the smiles off their faces.
Because they go to community. They've done all the research on happiness. Is little villages are the most happiest people in third world countries because they've got family, they've got deep connections. They have little in terms of materialistic things, but they have much in terms of internal things in place. So
it's almost as if they haven't been tainted by materialism, right?
Yeah,
we've got so many objects,
but they live differently comparatively to us because we finish school and then it's like, oh well, off you pop and go do whatever, uni or trade or and then you don't live at home anymore, and your siblings are out doing the same thing, and you're sort of competing against them and making sure that when you come home for Christmas every year that you're not the one that are so-called not doing as well. So.
But you can step out of that.
I know, but what I'm saying is that like that's the bubble that people fall into comparatively to living in a house with your parents and your brothers and your sisters, and you're there every day, every night.
Yeah,
you don't care what they're doing. You're all living under the same house. Who cares?
All that matters is food on the table.
Yeah, we're eating and we're smiling and we're laughing, and if Grandpa's sick or whatever, we help him out, and we just live happily ever after.
But even that, like, what you said, you said it. It's like you finish school and you go to uni or you do a trade.
You're shafted out of
Are they
it.
the only two options? Do you know
Go
what I mean?
travelling.
Go travelling, get out, live, experience life.
Yeah.
Go join the army, step in a pothole,
Fall in a hole.
have a
my leg.
blow your knee out, and go on a journey that has taken you to the Mud Hut today. Like
David Attenborough's gonna one day.
Who?
David Attenborough.
I think, righto.
Attenborough.
Yeah.
Hugh Van Geilenberg, the guy from the Resilience Project. I sat and listened to him one day, and he was talking about this little Indian kid who found a red bucket and had a hole in it. So we would have.
I wish I had a red bucket with a hole in it.
We would have discarded that as waste. This little kid found it, and it was just the best thing. Best thing since sliced bread for him. It was, and he picked it up and he ran over to all the other kids and said, "Hey, do you want to play with this bucket?" And the semantics around it was really important. Hugh didn't touch on this, but listening to it, I was like, "There's the key to this kid's happiness right there." He didn't possess the bucket. He didn't say, "Do you want to play with my bucket? I found it. It's mine." He said, "Do you want to play with the bucket?"
Yeah.
And that is very simple but very deep as well. And when I did the Vipassana meditation retreat, like sitting silent meditation for 10 days, they kept pounding into us like, less me, less my, less I. And you think about how often we use those words. It is all ego. It's all ego. We're talking about keeping up with the Joneses and the facade and everything. That's ego. It's money. It's linked to ego. It's all back to ego.
Yeah, but it's like that thing we've been talking about lately, and I can't stand it. It's like, you guys busy? Busy. I'm so busy. You go to some party, everyone's busy. If you're not busy, then you mustn't be doing something right. You know what I mean? It's just like
on my podcast,
does my head in.
Ryan keeps taking the piss out of me. What do you call me, the Sultan of Still? Because I'm talking about the opposite. I try and be as unbusy as I can. I came back from Thailand with the philosophy to live life as slowly as possible. I don't understand this concept of a rat race. Why is everyone in such a rush to get to the end? It doesn't make sense. You're not here, you're not present, you're not experiencing. And when you're not experiencing, you're just living in the reality of what you think should be happening instead of accepting the reality of what is happening.
And then you probably miss it when you get there anyway.
Yeah.
I got a meme that got me like a couple of days ago. I saw it on Facebook. It was Snoopy, and like whatever the other character is.
Yeah, Solo shared it before. Mate.
Is that the thing about what are you doing, mate?
This is
You only live once.
He goes, no, we only die once. We live every day.
Yeah, it's a cracker.
It is good, isn't it?
It's a ripper, and that's the thing. Like it's
Rossi's always banging on about how he doesn't think people know that they're going to die.
I know it sounds dark, but like I don't
No.
think people do.
Stoicism there's memento mori means that you too are going to die. It's a daily reminder that you will die. So people initially tend to see that as a bit of a morbid thing, but then if you look beyond that, it's actually you need to learn to live, be afraid of not living instead of being afraid of dying. It's every day is a reminder. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So I think if we can stop living in the future, that's where anxiety stems from. Stop living in the past because that's where depression comes from, and try and live in the here and now. It's just things tend to go away. We don't tend to have all of the emotional disturbances.
I feel like experiencing suicide is a real hardcore reminder of that. I think it.
What do you mean experiencing suicide?
Well,
Because then you're gone.
knowing someone who has suicided or taken their life or losing a loved one to suicide
Yeah.
is,
It's a stark reminder.
in my experience, was a real reminder of what are we doing here?
Without that, we wouldn't be sitting here, would we?
Exactly right. But it's a real reminder that you do live. You got every day to live, right? And it's just
So-
you do get attached to. I mean, we talk about we started with finance and
Yeah.
relationships, but we've dived finances down to this now.
What's more important, looking good and having all the bells and whistles, or getting home and spending time with your kids and having an in-depth discussion with your wife and growing a relationship and
You know what the best thing that happens is? That I just love? Blackouts. When there's a blackout and there's nothing except the people that you're with.
When was the last time you consciously switched your phone off for a while?
Switch the phone off.
Yeah.
Certainly not on a flight.
Yeah. I text all the way. No, I'm joking. I don't do that.
Yes, you do.
All right. No, well, when was it? It was the year before we started. The year before we started TradeMutt, so end of 2017.
Yeah.
I think it was like 3 or 4 months I did no social media, just killed everything off my phone, and I wasn't using it at all. Because it was like a point where, like my wife, my then girlfriend, and
your ex-girlfriend?
ex-girlriend, no, Lance, when we were going out.
Yeah, your wife.
Yeah, true. It was like one day, I can't remember where we were. We were out for dinner or something, and I was just like, this whole phone thing's got to stop. I mean, I'm coming home I'm home from work, and I'm on my phone, and then she'll get home from work, and then she'll be on her phone. I'm just like, this isn't working. I was like, we'll just both cut it. I'm pretty sure it was 3 or 4 months, can't remember exactly, but I was like, we'll just cut it and see what happens. It was fantastic. Bloody loved it.
Imagine going back to a flip phone. Or a
Yeah,
or a
I mean,
Nokia.
Why do they still use flip phones in movies? Have you ever noticed that? Even in modern
You're
movies
watching
now.
old movies. You
No. Modern movies, they are always...
You know in The Hangover, they're using a Motorola.
No.
You're an idiot.
Why have they got a BlackBerry?
They seem to still use flip phones. It's the effect. They do.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Anyone out there that can get evidence of that, please send it through.
I'll get evidence of that.
So when was the last time you switched off your phone?
Well, I can't pinpoint it. So long enough to not remember.
But I think
But I do keep it on silent 24/7 because I do not want to hear it ping.
Yeah, but it's still different because it's still connected and attached. So it's really good. And once again, all the studies are showing that going away for a weekend and digital detox is so important and so healthy. Get into nature, get away from the technology. That's.
Well, I think, but yeah, again, but like people try and do that. And you see it all the time, but then they'll be like Instagramming the whole thing, and they'll be videoing it, and it's like pics to prove it. I didn't walk up this mountain at daylight unless I sent through a photo on Facebook.
I love the quote: "Confidence is quiet." And if you're grounded within yourself, you don't need to go looking for outside approval. And I think that's a big sign. If you catch yourself Instagramming the shit out of your whole entire life looking for likes, then
But there's studies behind that. It's like
then that's a red flag.
the people that are putting up heaps of photos of them in a relationship with someone are normally the ones that are in a pretty bad relationship.
Yeah.
It's like,
when I was at the Gympie Muster,
I'm not saying that's for everyone out there as well. I'm
No,
just saying that.
at the Muster,
Some data.
Brad Cox and the band were up on stage, and they stopped in the middle of the thing and started to do this real, heartfelt talk about TradeMutt. The band were wearing the shirts, and he was friends with Dolly Everett. And I'm a big believer. This whole thing with taking videos at gigs when you're at the gig, but it's like, mate,
be there.
just be there and enjoy it, and tell people. How
I'm
awesome
going to
it was.
watch this back at a later
But
date.
when he started, I was like, holy shit, he's talking to me now, and like us here. I was like trying to get my phone out because I was like, God, I've got to record this. But it was a mix of man, I've got to watch him, but shit, I've got to get my phone out. I'm trying to listen to him. I was like,
But if it was just a conversation between the two of you, you wouldn't have felt
no
compelled
way.
to.
I know, and I don't know what came over me.
Well,
It's
a fear of I'm not gonna witness this moment again. It's that attachment.
yeah. And I thought about it afterwards. I was like, you dickhead! Why did you even bother getting your phone
Don't
out?
beat yourself up, mate.
No, I mean I don't. But it was like
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But I guess
red flag.
But I guess it's an example of just being in the
Yeah, it's
moment,
a
enjoying
great
that, and
Yeah.
obviously I got how much it meant out to me through my bloody poem, but it was just I thought it was a good example of.
Great example.
Well, let's talk about some of the amazing people that we've met through this little collab we've had on the Geo for a while.
Yeah.
We've met some great people who've come through, and we've hooked up with.
Yeah. So we obviously came together 18 months ago or whatever, and went around and did a few co-presentations to trade industry colleges and guest speaking and that sort of thing. And through that and through just people knowing that you guys are raising the awareness and I'm sort of creating that education element to it, they've come to me through the TradeMutt funnel. And these are blokes out in the bush that are struggling with drought, and these are guys that are fly in, fly out workers. These are just your average tradies who are just stuck and struggling. So I thought we could talk about a couple of them today, and it might some of the things they were struggling to deal with might hit home with some listeners, with your mum and dad.
Yeah, they're listening out there.
Just did we come up with alias names? For
I
those
think
people?
Dan will be cool.
Yep, cool.
Dan's loud and proud.
Yep.
So we went to
Camel Wheel,
Gamo Wheel.
Rockland Station. Are we allowed to say that? Well, it's out there now.
I guess so.
Got to put up with this every day.
And what we were there for it.
We were there just. They thought we were there shooting some sort of cult video. But
Oh, they got
Anyway.
us up there to speak at the
they did.
at the
Yeah.
2018 Cult Challenge, which was
Cult
awesome.
Challenge,
Yeah.
And we met
So- all the different stations for this one company came together for the Cult Challenge, and a bit of a rodeo. There was country and western music, both my favorite
God.
kinds of music. And yeah, we got up there, and then we did a bit of you guys got up and spoke, and then I got up and spoke, and we didn't realise it till a couple of days later where I got a phone call from Dan. He's like, "Hey mate, I drove 4 hours from Mount Isa to Camberwell to the dinner, and just because I heard that there was something happening out there relating to mental health, and I'd been struggling, so I just wanted to see what it was about." And his friend at the time took him out there as well, and he goes, "Yeah, everything you said hit home. It all resonated, and I need to stick my hand up and ask for some help." And I was just like, "You fucking hero, like, you're an absolute legend."
Yeah.
And so that was over 12 months ago, and he'd been working in a mine. He'd lots of bullying, bastardization, similar but different to what I experienced in the army. And so he'd left that, and he'd started up his own business as a fabricator, because like a lot of tradespeople, I'm a good tradie. That means I'm going to be a good businessman. As with a lot of traders, that's not the case, and same as with Daniel. So he got himself into quite a lot of debt and was just working 18 hours a day and just really, really struggling. Struggling in his relationships. He was lots of alcohol and suicide thoughts and just completely toxic version of himself. So when we do the 3 rings of mental, physical, nutritional health, I think he was about a 7 out of 30, which is one of the lowest I've had. And we spent a good 12 months deconstructing him and then reconstructing him. And, there was a lot of highs and lows through that. 2 steps forward, 1 step back some of the time, but kept progressing, kept trending in the right direction. And then recently, his brother, who works in a mine, said, "Hey, do you want to?" Because he shut down his business, so he wanted to sort of open his business again, but needed some cash behind it, needed some capital. So he'd worked with a few other blokes, that hadn't panned out. So his brother said, "Come and work in the mine again." And he's like, "Oh," and he rang me and said, "Look, there's this opportunity. Do you think I'm in good enough headspace to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's have a chat about it." And sort of, I think if we do it sensibly, I think it's going to be no problems for you, because I hadn't heard any red flags in the way that he was speaking for a while. So long story short, I drew up a mental health care sort of plan for him, where we were going to check in every 2 weeks via Skype, and wrote a letter, and his GP wrote a letter as well, and it was a really bad letter. Like, didn't help his situation. He went through a job agency as well, and the job agency didn't get the paperwork to the employer quick enough, so they flew him down to Adelaide, started work, and then 5 days later he was on a plane home. It was amazing when he rang me, and we had no idea this was going to happen. He rings me and he's laughing a bit, and I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Yeah, mate, they've let me go. 5 days into it, and they reckon they're overstaffed, and I don't know why they would have flown me down."
Oops, sorry, we didn't mean to employ you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But I was, and then I just switched my ears on. I was really sort of listening to where his head was at, and he's like, "Mate, it's not about me. It's about them." He said, I was really open. I wore my TradeMutt shirt. I'm like, "Yeah, I was very open and upfront. I've had some mental health issues in the past and some struggles, but I've worked into a really good headspace." And just admitting and owning, which I believe is so healthy and important, having no sense of shame around this. I've had struggles, because we've all fucking had struggles. And to be so forward thinking with that worked against him was a real disappointment, but he didn't take it personally. And he said, I want to use this as an opportunity to make sure that someone who's in a worse headspace than me, because there's so many dudes in the mines that, aren't diagnosed at the moment, but it's just not recorded, so they're still working. He said, I want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I had a meeting with the place that employed him today, and we're going to look at doing some mental health training and education in there and that. So to me, that was a real sign of how far Dan's come. And, he came to your first birthday. And
he's a legend.
Yeah, I mean, we've come really close to him through all of this. And he called me after that happened as well, and I know exactly what you're saying. Like, he was kind of laughing on the phone, and same thing for me. I was like, "Oh, well, he sounds better than I've ever heard him," but that comes back to that ownership piece, right? And that
being content,
taking responsibility, and like.
But he wasn't attached. So the 2 philosophies we work on is the source of all pain is attachment, and the law of nature is that everything is impermanent. So in this, his career in that mine went for 5 days.
Pretty impermanent.
That's very impermanent.
Yeah.
Okay, but Dan's practicing these philosophies every day, so he didn't get attached to thinking that he should be there any longer than 5 days. In an ideal world, yeah, he would. But the reality is, you've got no idea. You can't control so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, any other person that hasn't learnt what he's learnt would have flown off the handle, told them all to go and get ripped, rung you up and said, "This guy's a complete arsehole, and
really
world's
toxic.
against me," and
really toxic.
Yeah.
With regards to Dan specifically, maybe you don't want to talk about this, but like, you'd say that he had some mental health issues.
Yeah, and his mental health issues deteriorated into mental illness. Yep, for sure. So but to Dan's credit, he did the work, man. I had to challenge him. I had to, pull him apart. He had to put himself in a situation where he was so vulnerable. But this is the payoff. Same with me.
But for the record, I mean, yeah, as you said, Dan came to our birthday party, and we've hung out with him a few times. He's come into the office, come say g'day. He's just a normal dude, right? There's nothing.
Well, I've seen photos of him in his.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the fact that he's rocked some pretty nasty photos, rocking TradeMutt shirts.
But he's an interesting one. So like he got into doing like a lot of running and triathlon stuff.
Yep.
And it wasn't just because I think a lot of people out there just sort of, again, sort of picture this whole mental health thing of having to sit there on your, having a meditation for 6 hours a day and have the sparrows, going around your head. It's Ace Ventura stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's everything else around it, isn't it? It's looking after what you're eating.
Those three circles.
Exactly. But but people just. Yeah, people just think it's probably just one and not the other.
Well, people don't understand how we're affected, how our moods and feelings are created. That they're just byproducts of all the choices that we make. So, Dan got into all that stuff because first fundamental, I have to prioritise myself. I've got to prioritise my mental and physical health and make sure I'm fueling myself well. We get away from alcohol, stop needing a coping mechanism. Let's get into some self-management. And that's hard work, man. Like he was meeting with me once a week, and so he's like coming to the gym once a week and seeing a personal trainer. But then he was going and training on his own in this mental health, taking the hard path every day, multiple times a day. And so that's how easy it is to work on our mental health. There's so much stimulus occurring, whether it's a thought of ours or whether it's getting fired or whatever the case may be, a bill coming in. That's all just stimulus. And in the past, Dan was taking the easy path and going into that destructive thinking.
Yeah.
And it took him, 3 months of hard, intense training to now have his automatic response go into constructive thinking.
So that whole story for me kind of highlights one major thing. The whole thing about Dan and that whole part, that kind of doesn't bother me in the slightest. Like, that's awesome because of the place he's at now, right? That's really cool. But what it does highlight is how much of a lack of understanding there is around mental health on that workplace side of things, and how it's for them it's probably such an unknown, so much so that they're scared of it. And when you're scared of something, it's just like,
I got something to add. So I don't know if I've told you this or not, but I think I have told you this. The other day there was a close mate of ours, works for a big commercial company. He'll stay unnamed, and he basically went to them and said, "Oh, look, this is what these guys are doing. It's pretty cool. I would love to, get some on the staff."
Oh yeah, this does roll off what I was saying.
And basically, was he like HR or head of HR or safety or whatever? Basically said, "Look, great idea, but really don't want a lot of people, talking about mental health that aren't really trained in mental health." We don't really want people talking about it.
Who's trained in physical health?
But this is my thing, right? And I just replied back to him. I said, "Mate," well, their case in point is the entire problem.
Yeah.
I said, if we can't, get around talking about this shit on a daily, we don't need to be Professor bloody Dumbledore to talk about this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, just let's have at it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and to Dan's
Professor Dumbledore.
And
probably a bad example.
To Dan, you reckon? to Dan's former employees' credit, I got in touch with them and they agreed to have a meeting today because they want to become less ignorant in those inverted commas, And I said to them when I turned up today, this isn't about Dan. We can't change that. Dan doesn't want it to be about Dan. Dan's okay. Dan's moved on. This is about how we can help your company to improve and to become a better company. And they were open to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, how good is that outcome? But it is funny that there are people out there that have got that mindset where it's like, we better not.
Oh God, what if I say the wrong thing?
We better not have those guys over there talking about this stuff.
That's the mental health thing again. It's bury it.
It's just dig a hole and stick a head in there and just cover it over.
It's horrible. No one should ever have mental health.
But I mean, it's like you look at I get the reasons why in the media that they don't ever mention suicide. I understand that the reasons being that they are fearful of encouraging similar
Mm.
occurrences.
Mhm.
That's why they never mention it, but they always say,
Yeah, but it's
if
like
this,
anything.
if this brings up any issues for you, call Lifeline. And that was the whole reason
That's
why
the rollout.
that was why we
Yeah,
sang
I
our
know,
song.
but it's not. It's
Well, but this is the thing. It's like currently, I know we don't talk about statistics, but hey, the situation around suicide ain't great. I don't know if saying the word suicide is going to make it much worse at the minute, right?
Yeah.
well,
So why tiptoe around it?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like this whole, safe space, but it's just like let's just talk about it, you know.
If
Like,
you're scared of the word mental health, you're going to try and stay far. And I talk to clients about it. You can't change something if you're holding it at arm's length because you don't have access to it. So unless you embrace it and own it, then you can access it, then you can change it.
it's interesting because I see some of the people that struggle the most with it are the ones that are obviously pushing it away. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I don't want to have anything to do with that.
Well, and that's fear again.
Mm.
So fear is an irrational thought that leads to an irrational behaviour. And we see it every day. It's irrational for people to walk around not admitting that they have mental health because if you've got physical health, you've got mental health. If you're alive, you've got, So it's irrational for people to not think that they
What
have
did we
mental
say?
health.
What
Yeah,
was
but it
that?
comes back to education,
It does.
doesn't
Yeah.
it? That's all it is.
And that's why I'm trying to take this different approach where instead of attending to the symptom and trying to reduce the symptoms of anxiety and depression, not getting people in a position where they have to experience that. I mean, we've all got, and the fuck thing as well is that we all have anxiety. That's a natural part of us.
1 in 6, mate. Haven't you read the stats?
It's one.
Well, if you're a tradie,
I
it's
read
like,
it. Read it while I was at a urinal there. It's plastered all through the bloody bathroom.
Well, I'd counter that with 1 in 1 people have
100%.
anxiety.
Yeah,
Because
so-
you said
I
it
said
the
on
best.
the other day.
Yeah,
So if you're busting for loot, I'm anxious. You know what I mean?
that's funny.
So
Well, but no,
No, it's not meant to be funny. I'm meant to be serious. Like
Yeah.
that is like
you know,
it's an
anxiety.
anxiety of sorts. I'm going to pee. There's a fear I'm going to pee my pants.
I am anxious.
well, you said it the best around anxiety and depression.
Me? Oh,
Sorry, Salo. Anxiety is worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. Depression is worrying about the past,
Yeah, things you
Yeah.
can't change.
the things you can't change, and there's that point in the middle where you're not worrying about things that haven't happened or have happened. You're just in the moment.
Yeah, so we need anxiety because it's that fight flight. It protects us, and anxiety is just a bodyguard. But when we use it in the wrong place and to the wrong degree, that's when anxiety becomes an issue. So
Yeah.
for me, I wasn't self-managing. I couldn't protect myself emotionally when I was in the army and had all that treatment that I had there. So anxiety took over and rescued me. Agoraphobia was my anxiety keeping me safe from the outside world. And so it's amazing in that regard.
yeah.
But it wasn't helping me to move forward and move on. So I had to do some work on reducing
One of
anxiety.
the other big things that we hear a lot is people that reach out through our socials or when we're out doing talks or whatever, and they're like, "How do I I know someone's struggling. How do I help them?"
You can't help someone until they stick their hand up and ask for help, basically.
Which is the biggest challenge with the whole thing, because loved ones and mates and everyone can see it. Or,
You can't take ownership over someone else's happiness.
yeah, right.
But you can help them in a way that is not straight up helping them. So I guess it's more from the side. Being vulnerable, and that's how I help people, is being vulnerable, sharing my story and putting that out there. And if you see that someone's struggling, if you see that they've gone a bit quiet, or that they're more angry, or they're drinking more, or they're gambling more, or if you see some of these red flags, instead of going, mate, you fucking stop that, stop doing that, you need help, go and get help. That's just as humans, we don't like being told what to do. So it's like trying to lead a horse to water. You can see that it's dying of thirst.
You can't make its tongue work.
You're saying you're thirsty, but you try and slam its head in the trough, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you can go, hey mate, hey, tracking. Yeah, good. Yeah, no, everything's great. There's a facade. Okay, cool. It's just interesting because I've noticed X, Y, and Z. You can just gently reflect things to people. And they may even not be aware of it. They may genuinely believe that they're okay because they're in it. They can't see it happening. So if you gently reflect it without judgment, without telling them that they're doing anything wrong, it's an opportunity for them to go away and have a think about it and go, yeah, maybe he's right. Oh, yeah, I'm drinking too much. I didn't even notice. Okay, what's going on there? And then if they come back saying, mate, you're fucking spot on the money. Yeah, I noticed it because I did the same one day and I went and got some help and I went and spoke to someone professionally about it and we understood that was actually a coping mechanism because I was really struggling with this other stuff in my life. And that's it. And once you sort of, that's opening and then holding a space of vulnerability and you're giving them permission to then be vulnerable yourself. And you guys have done it. You know, you share your story at a presentation, and how many blokes start opening up to you?
Oh, it's all the time. There's always, 3 or 4 people that come up.
But that's the thing. I mean, one of the things that I always try to not drive home, but, it's, exactly that. It's like one of the best ways to allow someone else to open up is kind of, talk about some of your own struggles and dramas yourself.
Oh, it's part of our conversation tips.
It's one of our tips, for sure.
As soon as you do it, you're giving them permission to speak as well. So there's doing it in that way. And then there's support in them if they don't acknowledge it, if they keep their head in the sand. So I think I spoke earlier about 5 keys to change. And the first is having awareness that we need to change. Second key is accepting that we need to change. And a lot of people will stay in denial and bury their head and say, no, I'm right. No, we spoke about this when we do presenting. And, mate, your bloody bone's hanging out of your leg. No, it's not. No, I'll just walk it off. You're not going to walk that off, pal. But you can't tell them, so it's not a problem until someone says, hey, I have a problem. Doesn't matter what you can see, doesn't matter what you know. It's not about you, it's about them and what they believe.
Do you think a lot of people out there feel like they're going through some stuff or struggling with some stuff, but they're not actually sure how to rationalise how significant or how bad their situation might be because you can't see the bone hanging out of the leg?
Yes, another client of mine, Ryan in Swan Hill.
G'day, Swan Hill.
G'day, Swan Hill. Ryan's a cracker. He was sort of the original MindFit client, I guess, and all the programs are sort of based after working with him. And he hosted a night up in Swan Hill where he got a lot of mates together in a pub and had a beer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was not long ago. It was this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, 6 months ago or so. Yeah. And Ryan was a ripper because I said to him, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy were you when we first started working together? And he said something really interesting. He goes, mate, I'd convinced myself I was probably a 3 or a 4, but in reality I was dropping off a 0. And so he'd created this illusion through a false belief system that everything's okay if I just one foot in front of the other and I just keep going, she'll be right, mate. But the reality was far.
He was in a shocking position.
So we're about to bring it full circle here because what Rossi talks about people saying, oh, I'm busy, rah, rah, rah. Do you think when people are in those situations where there might be an issue going on, underlying issue that is starting to appear, it's easier to make...
Of course it is, because they don't want to sit still.
Keep busy to distract yourself from
that. It's a coping mechanism because it's the fear of stopping and slowing down. Everything's falling down. I'm going to have a breakdown. It's just a fear that people just have to keep going. And we'll call him Jared, the other client that we talk about. He is a builder, going hard at it, and he got a business coach, and it got too big too soon. Didn't have the foundation there, and it all just sort of imploded. And when I got hold of him, he was struggling. Like Ryan was a couple of months away from losing his business, couple of months away from having a divorce, couple of months away from ending up in a psych ward. Like it was that real for him. Jared was just kept pushing, and he couldn't see that his business had died, and he was still doing CPR on it, and it was just wasting sort of energy. He couldn't let go. Because it would mean he failed, and he thought that he'd put his family in jeopardy, and there was all this guilt and shame, and put us under all this financial pressure, and just beating himself up, and which is all understandable, but can be avoided if you know some other things.
Yeah.
To his credit, though, a couple of weeks into it, and he's he let go. He's going through a process, and he's going to close that chapter, and he's going to come into a new chapter really healthy and all the better for having been through what he's been through. And that's a credit to him because once again, he's doing the work. # do the work.
You know what I love I love I don't know if redemption story is the right word, but
Rocky.
you know how many people out there
After getting down, getting back up.
getting down and getting back up, how many people
A song
do
written
you
about that.
constantly see who have been to rock bottom,
Yeah.
to a place where you think, shit, that's
Yeah, but most of the people we've had on this podcast are exactly that.
100%. But
That's
I mean,
resilience.
the best one I like of recent times is Steve Smith. Like I talk about him a bit, but it's a bit of a different story. But still on a public scale, like people who have been down and publicly just
That was definitely, that's exactly what we talk about all the time. People don't know what another person's rock bottom is, and that would have been his.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing worse that could have happened for him. He lost the captaincy, got kicked out for a year.
Yep.
Shocker.
Pretty big deal.
Huge deal.
All in the public eye.
But no one's really talking about it. Everyone's at the moment is now talking about how incredible he is for
You look
coming
at
back.
Michael Jordan, all the infidelities and stuff. Tiger Woods,
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson,
Britney Spears.
Britney Spears. Tiger.
Jeez, Britney Spears.
I think for me, Tiger Woods is probably the biggest one.
Oh,
where
Ed still owes me $200 from that.
for winning the Masters.
He bet me that he
Never
made
win
a
another
bet
major.
a couple of years ago that he'd never win another major. I said $200. Tiger Woods wins another major.
Roscoe.
Still hasn't paid me.
Yeah. Earning the interest on that, and I'll eventually pay him.
But that's a massive example. Like
Huge.
he lost. Okay, he didn't lose everything financially.
Oh, fair hit though.
Yeah, he copped a whack.
That mug shot of him
Yeah.
really told the entire story.
But he lost his family, he lost his kids, and it was all because he was so hell-bent on his definition of success wasn't to go home and spend time with a loving family. It was money, 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 be the best, number one. And
And
that's
have
all good and
154
well.
affairs.
That's all good and well to get you to a certain point. But he was so similar to Ben Cousins, and he's a tragic story of someone who's hit rock bottom and can't get back up because they've got that personality where they're just so driven. It's all or nothing, and there's no balance in that.
The Ben Cousins one's is interesting.
I
though,
feel like
because
there's
it's
far
like
less of those stories. Sorry to cut you off. There's
Well,
less of those stories
is,
than the other.
But I mean, but the Ben Cousins one, from a mental health pro, what is going on there? It's just.
I think that's more. Biological than anything. I think that there's like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and these mental illnesses that can't be reversed through improving mental health. I think Ben's experiencing something to that degree. I'm not going to say what or anything, but
he's just living in his own.
Yeah, he's just
false reality.
He's still in so much pain, and he's self-medicating with all of these things. And my heart goes out to him. I really feel sorry for him.
And you're right. It comes back to, he's clearly not ready to help himself.
Yeah, that's a gleaming example.
But there may be an underlying mental illness which is creating an inability for him to help himself.
And when we're talking about mental illness, we're talking about significant mental illnesses that, take far more work and medication than
you go back to talking about change. So there's first the awareness and the acceptance, but then you need the knowledge and the tools and finally the capacity. And Ben is probably still in denial. He may not even, he's got the awareness. He has to have the awareness. He's probably in denial. He probably hasn't gone into full acceptance. He may have part acceptance because he's gone into rehab a couple of times, but he doesn't have the tools. He doesn't have the knowledge, and he certainly doesn't have the capacity. So
yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
But again, there's there seem to be far more redemption stories and people hitting that rock bottom and
yeah, but for anyone out there listening that wants to reach out, well, that's the right step. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Well, you've got to acceptance is the biggest part of it. Get rid of the shame. If you don't own and embrace that you're struggling and stick your hand up, then Ben Cousins is a classic. You can't lead a horse to water and make it drink sort of thing. He's got so much support, so many people have tried to help him, but he's just hell bent on running himself into the ground.
Too true, mate. Well, I've actually really enjoyed this chat.
Yeah, it's been good.
We could go on
Easily.
and on.
But you need to get to a flight.
I do. I gotta start warming up the arms.
So again, if anyone wants to hear more of Sutho, the Woke Blokes podcast, available on all platforms.
Get it in your ears.
Get it in your ear holes. And if anyone wants to get in touch, either reach out to us or directly to
hello at mindfit.com.au, email, or just through the socials, slide it up in my DM.
Oh, yuck, mate.
Well, I'm sure someone out there would have got at least something out of that.
I got heaps out of that. I love that chat.
Personally.
Yeah.
I think that Jared and Dan are two examples of hundreds of blokes. Like my practice used to be probably 80% women, 20% blokes. In the last 18 months, because of the focus work that we've been doing, it's flung around to 60% blokes, 40% women.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's a positive, massive positive.
Massive. And the majority of them are tradies coming through the door going, I need some help.
It's awesome.
Love it, mate. Thanks so much
for
coming in. And
thanks, boys. Keep up the good work.
Not going to be the last.
No, sorry.
You.